In this video, I'm going to show you a dirty trick that allows you to update controls in a parent form when data in a subform within that parent changes. Hi, I'm Philip from codekabinett.com, and as I said, I'm going to show you a dirty trick. But before we get to that, the backstory on this is someone asked in a forum how he can achieve it to update controls in a parent form when data in the subform changes. And then I suggested, yeah, you can handle the subform events, and I wanted to make a video about that, explaining how exactly you do that. But in the process of preparing the video, I found a different solution that is very simple and also does the trick. And nobody else in that forum discussion suggested that solution. So all the more reason to show this in a video, and I will get back to the alternative solution I originally proposed in a different video, because that is also valid. But without further ado, let's look at MsAccess. Here we are in a small sample database I prepared, and the important bit here is this subform down here, and the name of the subform control is subchildform. And this is very important when you look at expressions such as these here, where I reference the parent form going through the forms collection, and then I reference the subform control inside the parent. That is really important. It's not about the name of the form that is displayed there, because that would be FRM child as displayed here. That is not relevant here. We need the name of the control. That is something people often get wrong and then are surprised why their reference to a subform or control in the subform is not working as expected. What I also want to remark on, we are already inside the form, so we don't need this part here. You wouldn't need to go through the forms collection and name the parent form if you are in a different form or in a query and want to reference these controls. And I very much dislike these long chained references that go from all the top down by going through the forms collection and naming stuff, and I think these should better encapsulate it. But that is a topic for another video. For now, I only want to stress that the first part here is not really necessary, and I can simply go ahead and delete this bit here and just write subform, subchild form, the control name, and then reference the control inside that child form, because I am already in the context of the parent form. So there is no need to go all the way from the outside, going through forms and the parent form name and then reference the subform control. It's not necessary. You can directly reference the subform control inside the parent. What this expression does is very simple. It displays the text from this control in the subform in the parent form. That's super simple. It's just replicating the text of the current record in the subform. So, and there is another expression here in this control, and there we use the dsum function to just query the sum of the amount column, also used in the subform here, but it doesn't directly reference the subform. It only queries the data that is displayed in the subform. So Now let's look at this form in normal form view. You see up here in this control, whenever I change the record in a subform, it will be automatically updated. That's very simple and very nice. And you see also the sum of amount has been calculated. But now there is a tiny problem here. If I now change data in the subform and save it, you see this value has not changed. So even though I edited data here, my sum is not updated. And that is slightly annoying because we obviously want to present real-time, up-to-date data to the user and not the data that was accurate when the user opened the form. So, and that is basically the problem to solve here. How can I update this data when I change the amount column in the subform? And that's where I originally suggested, yeah, let's use events from the subform, but I happen to add something else to my example, and that is a similar control that is displaying the sum of that amount, but excluding the current record. And so I added a filter here for record ID, which is simply the record ID in the subform. And I said it should be unequal to the record ID that is displayed here. And I just reference this control, and that is actually to simplify things, I put a control in here that is the txt record ID, that is this control, and it's also just referencing the record ID control from the subform, so it displays the current record ID here, and so I can shorten the reference even more, that I don't go to the subform at all, but I reference this control here by typing in txt record ID. So this was supposed to show the sum without the current record, and this actually works pretty well. Pay attention to this value while I now switch records down here in the subform, and you see whenever I go to a different record, it updates the data. That led me to the conclusion, if there is a reference to the subform, then MsAccess will magically know, okay, I need to update this control whenever the current record in the subform changes. And I thought, okay, maybe we can use this mechanism to update our normal sum form that shows the total value, the total sum of all the records in the child form. So I tried something similar here, where I said, okay, let's reference the txt record ID, this form control, and then let's just compare that to itself. So we've got these two record IDs, and you see these are both references to the control in the form, and by comparing them with equal, I just say if 1 equals 1, display the record, or if 2 equals 2, or 9,507 equals 9,507. It doesn't really matter, because both values, the values on both sides of the equation will be equal, so it has no effect whatsoever on the data that is returned by our dsum query. And now let's look what happens now. So now I go to the subform again, and you pay attention up here, and I enter some data in here and I save this record. And you noticed the sum was immediately updated. And that is exactly what I wanted to achieve in this example, and I managed it by just adding a where condition to the dsum function call. And now this is something we also see if we use function calls in queries. If it is a function that is not taking any arguments, then the function is run once per query. It doesn't really matter if there are 1, 10 or 10,000 records returned by the query. The function is always only evaluated once. But if in the function call there is a reference to a column from the data in the query, then it will be evaluated for each record, because Access rightfully thinks, okay, if there is a value from the dataset passed in, then the result of the function might be different depending on that value. So it must be evaluated for each and every row inside that query. So this is not entirely new here, and it is quite logical that Access now evaluates this whenever the subform changes. But we can take this one step further. I switch back to design view, and now I can completely remove my additional criteria here from the dsum field, and can simply say, okay, I want to add txt record ID minus txt record ID, and I add this to the result of the dsum. So the dsum query now does not depend on data of the subform, because it will always be the same value as it has been before, regardless of the record ID of the subform. I just add essentially I'm adding 0 to the result, so I'm not changing the result at all, but Access cannot know that. It must evaluate the expression. But just look at what happens here. So we see the bigger value is displayed up here, and you also might notice something different, but I will get back to that. So here's the value, and now I go to the subform and delete this and save the record, and you see this was immediately updated. So by just having a reference to the subform record ID in the whole expression in the parent control, I was able to force Access to re-evaluate that function call once the data changed there. So this is possible if that is a numeric value. If I add 0 to a numeric value, yeah, then fine, this works. But we might have problems if we want to use a different function in here. So I just name this now and use the now function to display the current time. And this will always have the exact same behavior as our dsum function. It will display the current date and time when the form is opened, but it will not be updated. It doesn't make much sense for that to be updated, so I'm just using that as an example. And now I am concatenating that with the result of another function, the inline if function, and it doesn't really matter that much which function you use. I choose the if function because it allows me to do this. I I just say, yeah, I evaluate the record ID, and regardless what the result is, I will display either an empty string or an empty string. So this part of the expression will always be evaluated to an empty string. So it will not change the value returned by the now function call. So now let's look at the result here. That is exactly as expected. It is showing the current date and time, and when I change this here, you see it is always updating to the current time. That is what I wanted to achieve. But you also see something different happening here. This is a date and time, but it is left aligned in the control, and that is a side effect of me attaching the string value here that causes the whole expression to be converted to a string, even if I just appended an empty string. So to put that right, I need to convert that back to a date, and I use the cDate function to achieve that. And if I now once again show this in form view, you see now it is right aligned as it would be the default for date values. So this would be a very general solution to this problem. Just append something that must evaluate the value from the child form, which I do in the if function, and the whole if doesn't change anything, but I need to then convert back to the original data type. And that can be done by using the cDate function, cdouble for double. There's actually, let's have a quick look at the Object Explorer here. If we look at the VBA library, there is a module called conversion, and this has quite a few functions here that all can be used to convert to a different data type. And you must apply this to the expression in a form to get it back to the original data type that your expression had. That is a slight drawback, but I think that is a rather minor problem. Now, finally, let's try something else. Does this also work with VBA code? And yes, it does. And I'm going to show you. So here will be some VBA code. And I just replace the bit here and call my complex calculation VBA function here. And I need to get rid of these parentheses, and now it should be fine. And let's switch back to form view here. Oh, there's a tiny problem there. Yeah, because I mistyped this. It's a calculation. So, and now if we switch this to form view, we see this is the value of the return value of my VBA function, and for whatever curious weird calculation it does, it updates whenever I change a record down here. And it also updates if I change data, like add an ABC to this control. Pay attention up here to the VBA text. I save the record in the subform, and this will also trigger an update to the expressions in the parent form. So let's quickly look at this complex calculation. Oh no, I don't want to run a macro. So if you pay a closer look, it's not so complex at all. It's just returning a random value between 1 and 1000, and that's not really a big deal. I want to add something here that to show you that I not only can return data from a function, but I can also change other stuff here. Let's use this and just increase the font size. That doesn't make much sense, but I just want to show you that you also can use VBA code that not only is a function returning a value, but that also changes other aspects of the displayed parent form, or that can basically run arbitrary operations. Whatever you want to do, you can put it in a VBA function, and that will be triggered when you update data in here. Now pay attention to the control up here, and I changed some data here, so I save that, and you see whenever I change some switch to another record here, or if I enter new data and save it, the text in that control will grow because I always increase the font size by 1. Well, that was just a silly example to show you visually this runs every time the subform is updated. So you can use that to run any code you want to run. So that is basically the end of this video. I showed you what I wanted you to show, and I hope you learned something new today. It was definitely new for me. I didn't know that. And I think it is a very interesting way to use simple expressions in Access to update a parent form in a parent subform constellation. So, thank you very much for watching, and bye bye!